Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Sunita Narain, one of India's top climate experts, the Director General for the Center of Science and Environment, one of India's top NGOs in this sector. And today we're discussing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's promise to the climate summit in Glasgow. India has made several promises, but amongst the most interesting is the commitment to cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2070. Ms. Narain, welcome to ThePrint.
Thank you, Jyoti. Happy to be with you.
So the first question to you is this promise by the Prime Minister at the Conference of Parties Summit in Glasgow, which is to cut carbon emissions that India emits to net zero by 2070. So first of all, explain to us what this means, how significant it is, and what net zero is about.
So let me explain the concept of net zero and where it has come from. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, essentially has said that the world has to become net zero by 2050 to stay below the 1.5 degree temperature rise. So all these things are important. 1.5 degrees temperature rise is important because we know that's a guardrail. It's like a safety net. Anything above that will be even more catastrophic. We know that we are over a degree in temperature rise since 1870 till today, 1.1 degree. And we know we can see the catastrophic impacts all around us, the devastation all around us. So kind of the world has said, let's try and stick to 1.5 degrees. Mm-hmm. To stick to 1.5 degrees, IPCC has said the world must move to net zero in 2050. Mm-hmm. Now, the inequity of this, and that is why CSE has been very critical of the net zero concept, because the developed world, if the world has to move to net zero in 2050, then the already industrialized world, which have taken up 70% of the carbon space up till now, should have moved to net zero in 2030. Mm-hmm. China, which is an increasingly huge polluter, and in fact, what I call today, China is yesterday's United States, because it is emitting and nobody has the courage to call on China to do anything. They should have moved in China should have been 2040, then the rest of the world could have been 2050. Now, given the fact that the rich world has said 2050, China has said 2060, India saying 2070 is perfectly defensible. But as an environmentalist, we are very clear that the net zero is not equitable, it's not ambitious. But India's commitment clearly shows that we are willing to walk the talk. We are willing to say that even though we are not responsible for the stock of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we will set a limit on ourselves.
Now, this is the first time that India has set a limit on itself, isn't it? Because all this time there's been a lot of talk about the developed world, like you said, which has emitted most of these greenhouse gas emissions, which is not willing to walk the talk. But why do you think India, and Prime Minister Modi makes this promise, why do you think India is taking on this target for itself?
Well, India has taken on a much bigger target. We have agreed to cut our emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030, which means that we are actually saying our per capita emissions will, instead of reaching 4 tons, will remain below 3 tons in 2030. So we are putting limits on growth. We are talking about an energy transformation by increasing the percentage of renewable energy and non-fossil fuel energy capacity. So India has definitely come up in Glasgow with a package, which, as you say, we have not done so in the past. Now, in the past, there have only been 2 times when India has actually, so the first was when Dr. Manmohan Singh had gone to a G20 meeting or a G7, I can't remember now, and India had said, we will never let our per capita emissions exceed yours. Right. And that was a very important sort of yardstick of saying, we will stay responsible. And that's what Prime Minister Modi has actually reaffirmed today through the NDCs, through a target, which means that we have given this officially to the UN or the UNFCCC, saying this is what we will do. Then, of course, in the Paris Agreement, which was a highly inequitable agreement done to please the Americans at that time. India also gave an emission intensity reduction target. So India has given targets in the past, but this one is a game changer. There is no doubt.
But why do you say it's a game changer?
It's a game changer because we have really gone that extra mile. By agreeing to cut 1 billion tons of our emissions by 2030, we are simply saying that we are going to put a limit on the growth as we know it. Growth today, carbon dioxide emissions we know come from coal, come from oil, come from all the sectors which are very important for the economy, but are extremely polluting. India is saying that we will put a cap on our per capita emissions by cutting the 1 billion tons. And this means we are agreeing to do an energy transformation at a scale that no country has done till now. And remember, Jyoti, all other countries have first polluted, and these are carbon dioxide emissions which stay long in the atmosphere, which means that the cumulative impact of these, the historical emissions, the cumulative impact is what is leading to the forcing of the temperature increase. That is what is leading to it. India is actually saying we won't first pollute and then have to clean up. So it's a huge statement. Obviously, there are going to be big challenges going forward. To me, the biggest challenge is going to be that India's per capita remains very low because India is a very poor country.
So So that's the next question. Isn't it going to compromise on your development and your own targets for development?
So it depends. Again, it's not necessary. India has very clearly, we have a target for renewable energy. We have a very high target for renewable energy capacity. We have our own trajectory shows that we have current coal. We can add to it renewable. The new energy capacity comes in renewable. Of course, the base load is the big issue, and the base load is where gas will come in. And we have factored that into our emission into India's emission trajectory. The question, Jyoti, is how equitable will all this be? Because remember, per capita is low not because of people like you and me. Mm-hmm. We may still be we are not as high as the Americans. We are nowhere close to 9 tons per capita as the Americans are, but it's still high. And the question then becomes, will we be able to meet these huge energy transformation goals and still meet the needs of the very poor in India and make sure that they get energy for their livelihoods and their economic security?
So that's a big question, isn't it? So in a sense, the PM would have had to bite the bullet because, as you know, these past several months, lots of people have come from the West. You know, the UK Environment Minister was here. Then John Kerry was here from the US. All of them, I imagine, sort of pressing India, the Narendra Modi government, to make commitments. Now, India has made this commitment. But I think the concern that remains is that with the large numbers of poor people that we have in our country, and that development will be compromised.
No, not necessary. Again, I would say not necessary. It's a question of how we go forward, okay? And how the world goes forward. I think India has we've bitten the bullet, as you say. We've thrown down the gauntlet. We've said, yes, we will do it. But it's dependent on 2 things. The Prime Minister also said $1 trillion of climate finance is needed. And remember, one of the points that we have been saying is that the worst thing with climate finance is that it is not measurable. It is not verifiable. So we don't know today what is coming in the name of climate finance. At the G20 meeting, Canada and Germany had done a report which was almost saying that the rich world is reaching its 100 billion target. But, Oxfam's report shows you that OECD countries have been covering up every loan, every money that they're giving, even for road building, that they're giving for private finance as climate finance. So I think it's very important to now hold the rich countries, their feet to the fire. I think it's important that India has said, we accept that climate change is an existential threat, but you now need to walk the talk.
Right. So the PM in Glasgow makes 5 big commitments. One of this, which a couple that you've just discussed, net zero being one of them. He's also said that that India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. Again, something that you just mentioned. But isn't, this reliance on, say, solar or wind power, that's unreliable, isn't it? Because you still haven't found a way of collecting this.
It's not unreliable. I think there are challenges. There is no question about it. There are challenges. There is cost issues involved. And I'm not
unreliable. You don't get the power when you really need it.
Yeah, but that's why you have battery storage. And there's huge efforts in battery storage. There are many countries who are beginning to meet massive amounts of their energy needs from renewables, from offshore wind, from other sources. So, I mean, that's part of the challenge. And I think India has, it's not going to be easy, Jyoti. Let me not make light of this. I'm not trying to say these are just, but the fact is we have kind of said we accept that we will have to change the way we grow. And I think as an environmentalist, given the fact we have been arguing that co-benefits is the approach, we need to do for climate change what is best for our own economy, for our own health. Use of coal is definitely bad for us. We are choking with coal today. We need to electrify our economy. We need to make sure that we have affordable power. We can fix the problem of discom so that we get out of inefficient use of coal in these millions of small boilers across India. But clearly we need to step up. I mean, we cannot keep saying that coal is our future and there's a huge double, triple jeopardy in the forests under which the coal is being mined, the people in whose home that coal is found, and then, of course, the extremely polluting nature of the thermal power plants. Now, CSC's point has been, let's get rid of some of the old plants. That's a whole, there are ways of being able to clean up without jeopardizing and compromising our economy. But the point is, we're going to have to find that pathway ahead. And to me, I think the biggest question that you should be asking, that the world should be asking is, what about China? I mean, India has said all this, but what about China? I mean, China gets a complete cop out. I mean, he doesn't even come. Nobody can put pressure on China. China will take up 33% of the available carbon budget between now and 2030. China, as a single country, will emit 250 gigatons between now and 2030. It's massive. They're still building coal-based power plants. They have said they won't build in Africa, but that's a double irony. I mean, Africa needs energy and affordable energy. And what's their source of energy going to be? So I think we need to be able to understand that for all the talk we have, as soon as countries get rich, authoritarian, and the superpowers of the world, they get out of control. And this is where the US has blocked an effective climate agreement for 3 decades, and now China. And we need to put those countries on the mat.
So a couple of questions from there. Why do you think China's Xi Jinping didn't go to Glasgow?
I don't know China. You're a foreign correspondent.
No, but I mean,
as an environmentalist, I think we are calling out China now. And, and quite frankly, our own data is showing us, and we, in our agenda for COP26, we have said, put the spotlight on China. But I find the Western media always tiptoeing around the word China, just like they tiptoed around the word US till Paris. Let's be very clear. The United States has been regressive in its climate change policy up till the time that Joe Biden has come to power. Okay? Whether it came to Rio, whether it came to the Berlin conference, the big conference that happened in the post-Rio, whether it came to Kyoto, and then when it came to Paris, the US has consistently blocked every effort of the world to have an equitable agreement, to have an ambitious agreement. It has also blocked every effort of the world to set rules that would apply to everybody. And this is where China's long game is fascinating, because China joins WTO in 2004, 2005, and then it just spirals. I mean, please understand, the nature of this. China's emissions are 10 gigawatts, 10, okay? US is 5. India is 2.6.
This is today.
This is 2019.
Okay.
Okay. So just look at the scale. And China has not put out a target for reduction. It has said it will vaguely peak sometime. Okay. Our calculations show China will actually increase between now and 2030. It will take up 33% of the available carbon budget. Okay. We have only 400 gigatons left between now and 2030 to keep the world below 1.5 degree. One single country, China, will take up 33%. Now, I think this is where I find very interesting, because I've been too long in this game. I just find it very interesting to see how the Western media sort of pussyfoots around every time these issues come up, because they don't want to call out the large polluters. It's much easier to put the focus on a country like India.
So perhaps the Chinese are saying now that, listen, if the Americans have gotten away with it for the last 3 decades, why shouldn't we do it now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think China is definitely saying it right now. I'm not even saying maybe, they're definitely saying it right now. They're a bit more sophisticated. They've also built their solar technology economy, their wind economy, their battery economy, so that the world today needs China more than China needs the world. Okay, so they will make money out of climate change. But yeah, I mean, China is definitely saying, why should we? I mean, we are superpowers. As the Americans told us for so long, every climate agreement is fundamentally and fatally flawed because you can't tell the Americans what to do. Mm-hmm. Chinese are saying the same.
So today in Glasgow, Ms. Narain, do you think that the commitments that the world is making, of course, the summit has just begun and we'll see over the next few days how this unfolds, but are the Americans, Joe Biden is there, are they making a commitment to hold on to or to bring down their greenhouse gas emissions by either 2030 or say by 2050? Are you sort of satisfied with at least the promises that they're making?
So they're definitely more ambitious than the past. Joe Biden's 50% reduction by 2030, which is the time frame I'm interested in. I'm not looking at 2050. Okay, 2030 is the time frame that we are looking at. It's definitely much more ambitious than the past, but it is still not a fair share of the United States. And
how much would it be?
There are different formulas to calculate it, but it's not a fair share because the US still occupies a very large proportion of the cumulative, the historical plus current carbon stock. Okay. So, but it is ambitious. The problem I have is that Joe Biden's own Congress has blocked his infrastructure bill, and the climate bill is still up in the air. But he'll actually be able to meet those commitments. We don't know. Okay. So yes, the renegades right now are Russia and China and Australia to some extent, who have not even bothered to give any commitment which is meaningful. The others have sort of given a commitment which doesn't match their contribution, but it is ambitious. And I think that's a good start.
So can I ask you a couple of lay questions? When in India, for example, even though you're saying that India's pollution or emissions are much lower than those in the developed world, but somehow our skies seem to be much more polluted. Delhi, for example, we are getting into winter. We're in the festive season now. Diwali is around the corner. Why is that? If India is polluting much less, then why is it that things seem to be much worse here?
There are two different pollutants: CO2 versus PM, versus NOx versus SOx. Okay. Delhi, and there's a local pollutant and there is a global pollutant. CO2 is a global pollutant, which is what has a very long residence time in the atmosphere. And that is what creates climate change. What we have today is PM emissions, particulate matter emissions. We have SOx emissions, NOx emissions, which have a very short residence time. So yes, we are polluted, but it is not what causes climate change. But it is vehicles, the fuel economy in vehicles causes CO2 emissions, okay? The technology and the fuel used in vehicles causes PM, NOx and SOx emissions, which is what we are choking on. So, we need to keep these a little, sometimes you get a co-benefit, but not always.
Okay, just to last couple of questions. There's a coal question that I have. If you remember, just a week or 10 days ago, it seemed as if India was running out of coal stocks. There was a sort of panic in the air that electricity would be, compromised, and whether it's in households or factories. And then, things moved on. Things have eased since then. But if you're talking about if India is making this promise that it's going to reduce its emissions via coal substantially, then obviously you have to move to other sources of energy. And
Sorry. So there's a package. I mean, India is basically saying by 2030, if you look at this is a package put out by the Central Electricity Authority, which is a government authority, in January this year, where they have set out what should be the roadmap for 2030. In that, and remember, these are establishment energy people. So these are not NGOs, the Jholawalas, as you like to call them, who have done this. This basically sets out an agenda forward, which says that by 2030, India will increase its coal energy, but cap it at roughly about 288 gigatons, coal and gas. Which will still be a substantial part of our energy future, but not overwhelmingly important. Today, it is 70% of the energy generation we get is from coal. What we are saying is, what CA has said is that coal and gas will still remain in 2030 56% of India's energy generation, as against where it was, which is currently 80%. So there is a reduction, a substantial reduction. Now, this is where the new energy sources, whether it's renewables, hydro, will have to step into the game. Now, when we have put together a roadmap for thermal power plants in India, we are looking at co-benefits, Jyoti. We believe India is a poor country. We need to meet energy needs of very large numbers of people. So we have to have a roadmap which is sustainable because it is affordable as well. Mm-hmm. So when we have put together the roadmap, what we are simply saying is that you have 32 gigawatts of coal plants, which are old, inefficient, and actually very polluting. Mm-hmm. So if you got rid of those and replace them, because you're still talking about having the same energy, you could actually meet that energy need by having a much lower carbon footprint. And you could remain coal dependent. I mean, 60% of your energy generation will still be coal dependent, coal or gas dependent, but you can make sure that the remaining energy comes through renewable sources. And there, of course, battery storage will be expensive. And I think, the rich world has to walk the talk. I mean, I am not one who goes abroad and says, "Arey tumne pehle kiya, hum nahi karne chahte hain. It's very cheap." I don't agree that solar energy is cheaper than coal today, because the delivered cost, it is much higher. But we will have to make that investment, and that investment should be paid for.
So here I have a nuclear energy question. The Prime Minister also said that perhaps we should move to nuclear energy because it's cheaper. But I want to ask you for your point of view. How does it stack up? I mean, let's not get into the politics of the nuclear suppliers group, but just nuclear energy, like civil nuclear energy.
So, as environmentalists, we are obviously this is not a source that we would like to depend on. It is clearly the irony of ironies, where you need to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And so you're going for a source of energy which is actually much more unfriendly from an environmental point of view. The waste of nuclear energy, the safety of nuclear energy is still an issue. And Germany, however, has really seen that conflict and that dilemma. I mean, Germany agreed to phase out its nuclear plants because of the huge opposition to nuclear. And today it has Germany is talking about phasing out coal by 2035. Because they have to now move to coal. So if you ask me to choose the lesser evils, I would not want to choose. I will say to you, there will be another source that we can find. There will be another approach we can find. But yes, nuclear is something that it's a very macho kind of thing. People like nuclear. It's big, it's powerful. It's kind of, it's the nuclear industry in India has always been one of those. But if you look at it, they're still delivering only 2% of the energy needs of this country. And, To me, nuclear will never happen because it's a NIMBY problem. India is a very populated, densely populated country, and I'm not sure if you would like to live near a nuclear plant. And if you're not prepared to live near a nuclear plant, nor will the India's poor want to live near a nuclear plant, which is why there is huge conflict over Mithapur and all the other nuclear plants which are on the table. So I think the siting of nuclear plants in an environment where people have a voice, and that's the best thing about India and the worst thing about China, is something that I think will make nuclear difficult. But yes, if the Indian government feels they can do it, best of luck.
Okay, so absolutely the last question. Do you think one of the big focuses of the Glasgow summit should be that China should be put on the mat, or at least information around China and what China is doing should be made much more transparent?
So we have 5 agendas. First is front load emissions of the rich countries. 2050 is not good enough. Come up with a 2030 roadmap. Come up with a clear way of how you will reach your 2030 emission reduction. To put the spotlight on China. China is getting away with absolutely no commitment on emission reduction. It is not acceptable.
Climate murder.
I mean, that's your words. Okay. I would say the long game of China. And I definitely think so. What we have been asking for is dehyphenate India from China and dehyphenate China from G77, which is a very tough one. Okay. Because China is always hidden behind G77 to be the voice of the poor.
Yeah.
But we need to figure that out, and the world needs to figure out. From our point of view, we are saying China has to be in the spotlight. We're also saying China because we are saying global rules matter. It was the United States which never wanted global rules that would apply to all, which is why China has got away with this today. So we need global rules. Tomorrow, India may come up with an emission plan which is much higher. We also need global rules. Everybody needs global rules to stay under. Third, we are saying finance has to be upped and measurable. This is the third big issue that we're saying. We're saying not net zero, but 2030. Fourthly, we are saying focus on adaptation and focus on loss and damage. Under the Paris Agreement, it said the liability and that compensation would not be part. If a country measured a loss and asked for a damage to be paid, it cannot be done through a liability or a compensation mechanism. We think that's completely wrong. Today, scientists are able to attribute every adverse climate event to adverse weather event to climate change.
Right.
So it's critical that we have a loss and damage agreement.
Right. Sunita Narain, as always, a huge learning experience to talk to you. Like you say, the world is running out of time. Thank you so much for your time and for speaking.
Thank you.